Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios, welcome to this Thursday's edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo and thank you for tuning in. On the show this evening,
to get to this stage where we are implementing lifestyle audits was not an easy task.
Lifestyle audits for public servants and politicians finally becoming a reality. We speak to the minister driving it on a day she brought together the country's law enforcement agencies, senior public servants, as well as several other local and foreign anti-corruption entities to brief them on how it's all going to pan out. Another high-profile black leader quits the DA. She's my in-studio guest for this evening. That's before we end off with President Cyril Ramaphosa's appearance before Parliament, where the Russia-Ukraine conflict took center stage. The Watchdog starts now. President Cyril Ramaphosa has been talking about it for a while now. It's one of those milestones that, if it was to finally happen, would send one of the strongest signals that the government is indeed serious about fighting corruption, especially within its ranks. Well, Public Service and Administration Minister Ayanda Dlodlo is in the driver's seat and joins us now on the line hours after giving a keynote address at that two-day Indaba, which began today. Minister, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. It's starting...
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbogo.
Thank you. On the 1st of next month, is that correct? The implementation?
Yes. Well, the implementation has begun from April 2021. And again, the second round of the work that we do begins in earnest next month on the 1st of April. So there are a few departments that have started with their work already, as I had indicated at the Indaba this morning. And of course, we have designated a number, I think about 138 ethics officers across departments, both at national and at a provincial level.
So what has been happening, very briefly, what has been happening over the past year? What have these departments been doing?
Well, the departments have appointed the ethics officers, and through the disclosure, the financial disclosures that are done every year, submitted both to the head of department, also headed to the ministers of the executive authority departments, then also handed over to the Public Service Commission. Now, those financial disclosures are actually the beginning of what would be a lifestyle review. That then takes us to a process where we get to a lifestyle audit in the event where the review picks up risky areas and possible conflicts in the disclosures that would have been made by different employees. Now, the process of the lifestyle audit takes different turns. It would lead to ultimately the investigations that would then be taken to court for prosecution where people are found to have acted unethically and in conflict with the law. So the rules are very clear. The financial disclosures really are the beginning of what we would call a lifestyle audit in any department.
Mm-hmm. So the way it's going to work is everyone is expected to declare. Is that correct, Minister?
Well, it is people from levels 9, basically, especially those that are in supply chain, okay, and right up to level 16, which are your directors general, who okay, are expected to declare.
Okay.
Now, the declaration of your financial interests will then be scrutinized by the Public Service Commission, but also scrutinized by the ethics officers that are designated in each of the departments. That is part of the risk assessment process to ensure that there is no conflict, there is no misconduct, that people are living within their means. Where there is unexplained wealth, that then triggers a lifestyle audit on the individuals. So truly speaking, the process has long begun. It's just that to get to the point of the actual lifestyle audit after the lifestyle review has been done is the new thing that we have been introducing over the past year.
Okay. Now, what happens in instances where people hide their stuff very well? What are the provisions for people to then tip off and then say, look at so-and-so's affairs. This is what we suspect, or which is what we know is happening, or is that left out of this process completely? In other words, it then becomes, the work of whoever is responsible for whistleblowing within the department or law enforcement agencies.
No, it is not left at that, Vuyo. It is also taken up by the ethics officers. It is then taken to the Public Service Commission, as I said, because it is risks that are identified. But in certain instances, you would, of course, have whistleblowers that bring these matters to the attention of law enforcement or to the attention of ethics officers or the security managers in departments. So it's a multi-pronged approach that ultimately leads to a lifestyle audit where forensic auditors are then brought on board to assist before we hand over to the police for a full-scale investigation.
Now, you mentioned the Public Service Commission, who I remember in my last conversation with one of the commissioners, are also asking you and the rest of government to give them some teeth. Is that something that you are looking into as well?
The teeth will be looked at multi-pronged as well. It would be both from a departmental perspective, having scrutinized and studied how wide the problem is and how entrenched the problems are in government per se. But you must also remember that that would be a parliamentary process. It would not be a process that ends with me as the minister responsible for ethics and anti-corruption in the public service. It would also have to be taken through to Parliament for ratification.
Well, they expect you, I would imagine, to champion this, within cabinet and everywhere else where your voice can be heard.
Obviously, it rests with me, as I said, because I am the minister responsible for developing or establishing norms and standards on corruption, ethics, and issues that relate to the code of conduct.
An interesting line or two in the speech you gave this morning, and I quote, "Lifestyle audits are not a punitive measure and was certainly not adopted because we regard corruption amongst public servants to be alarming. But we cannot deny the fact that we do have corrupt public service employees."
Well, it is not necessarily a punitive measure. It is about ensuring that we professionalize, modernize, and ensure that the public service is ethical and developmental in its nature. A capable state is what we are ultimately looking at. Now, if you have a cohort of people that are unethical, then it means our plight, our
Okay, we seem to be losing the minister there.
Of the public service and ensuring that we deliver quality services to the people that we serve will be hampered by those that are unethical in public service.
Okay, that line, Minister, is giving us some problems. Let's hope that it's going to hold for a couple more minutes. There's a couple of things I want to ask you. Just to finish a point on what you've just said, do you have any idea as to the extent of corruption in the public service presently?
Well, is it any better? Because I decided to switch off the video thinking...
Yes, that's fine. It's better. It's actually better, Minister. Yes.
Perfect. Can I hear your question again? Sorry.
I was saying, do we have any idea at the moment of the extent of corruption within the public service?
Well, it's almost like we have to work on the disclosures and rely on the work of the ethics officers, including the work that will be done outside us through the hawks and also through the police. So the extent of the problem in the public service has not been scientifically determined as yet, because we are still fresh into getting into the issues of lifestyle audits, as you would know. So with time, the work that we do will help us to have an evidence-based indication of where we are with respect to the extent of corruption, misconduct, and also unethical conduct, unethical behavior within the public service. So as yet, we do not have a clear picture, but it doesn't seem to be a picture that is hugely alarming.
Now, a few weeks ago, you said that you told Parliament that you are yet to, make significant progress with regards to cabinet ministers. Now, I read in Business Day, this morning, that ministers have been asked to hand over passports for lifestyle audits. Do you know anything about that?
I certainly do not know anything about that. I haven't received that directive as yet. If it is indeed true, it is a directive probably that is sitting on my desk or is yet to come. I haven't seen it as yet. But you will understand that my responsibility as the Minister for Public Service and Administration is with regards to the public service on ethics and anti-corruption. I cannot go beyond my designated responsibilities as per the Public Service Act and its attendant regulations, and also the Public Administration Management Act. All of that then, when it comes to members of the executive, it is either the responsibility then of the people that they are accountable to, which in this case would be the president in the case of ministers and deputy ministers. So the presidency would embark on that process, and at provincial level, it would be the premier's offices that would embark on that process. My responsibility really is to the service itself, the public service itself, and public servants, but the level of the executive is above my pay grade.
Oh, okay. But you yourself has not been asked to hand over your passport?
Well, I have not been in the office today. Maybe it is on my desk. I really do not know, Vuyo. As I said earlier on, I haven't received that as yet.
Okay, before I let you go, Ms. Minister, any truth to the reports that you're going to the World Bank?
I do not know if that is true or it isn't true. I am still the Minister of Public Service and Administration. I serve at the behest of my president, and insofar as my career move, that is always determined by the party to which I belong.
Okay, so it may be true, but perhaps you're not prepared to talk about it right now.
I don't know about its truth right now, Vuyo, so let's leave it at that. I would...
Okay, we're going to leave it at that for now. Thank you very much for your time, Minister.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you.
And the Minister of Public Service and Administration, they are holding a 2-day indaba in preparation for the lifestyle audits that are going to be compulsory. In fact, they became compulsory on the 1st of April 2021, but now they're strengthening the system, briefing everyone about how things are going to pan out, but also sharing some note on how to proceed going forward. But the minister is saying, well, she has no knowledge about what is happening with regard to ministers and deputy ministers because it hasn't gone there yet. But according to a report in today's Business Day, there too, the wheel is starting to roll. That's why we're going to leave that particular story and we're going to move to this story. After the break, Balindile Duli on leaving the DA and what her future holds. Welcome back. Balindile Duli has left the Democratic Alliance after 15 years. The 33-year-old who lost the party's 2020 presidential race to incumbent John Senezan plans to take a break from politics. Duli is credited with helping to grow the party's rural support base in KwaZulu-Natal. She is the latest high-profile black leader to leave the official opposition.
That I've tendered my resignation to my party, both as a DA member and as a member of the KZN legislature.
After serving for close to 2 decades in the Democratic Alliance, Balindile Duli has decided to quit active politics. Duli cut her teeth in politics in her teens and served as the party's youth leader in 2013. She rose through the ranks and became the DA's spokesperson on cooperative governance and traditional affairs, and was also a member of the KZN legislature. Duli joins the queue of a number of black leaders that have left the party, most recently former Midvaal Mayor Bongani Baloyi. She says she left the party on her own accord and was not pushed out.
I've decided of my own volition that for my own personal growth and my own trajectory in terms of what I see as being the role that I play in the country, to step back. And I think that a good dancer always knows when to exit the stage, and I think that I've done my bit for the DA. I'm incredibly proud of the work that I've done there, but there is now, I think, an opportunity for me, after some deep introspection, to really take a step back, and from formal politics at least.
Duli is known for being vocal and outspoken. In 2020, she went up against John Steenhuisen for the party's top position. She criticized some DA leaders and described the behavior of the party as cult-like. She also bemoaned the culture of top-down management within the party.
I think that I've always been very forthright about the things that I think have not gone well in the party. It's why instead of just only complaining, I started a campaign to try and run to be able to change it, because I don't believe that you should only criticize and not do anything. But at the same time, I've stayed in the party. I've still done all my work up until the very last day, because I also respect democratic outcomes and I respect that people have a different view. And I wish them all the very best in continuing to do what they do.
Her political party in the province lauded Duli for the contribution she made.
I think Mbali is a dynamic young lady, and she resonates with people. And I think that's one of her biggest assets. And she certainly played a role, particularly in more rural constituencies where she built structures on the ground.
Although Duli left of her own will, what does the exit of multiple black leaders from the DA mean?
I think that the current exodus of leaders that has taken place is really starting to spell, I don't want to say the end of the party, but the end of the party as we've known it. They're going to continue to shrink until they become a one-two-man party that only represents your local suburbs in Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town, and other suburban areas of this country.
An emotional Duli says that she will not be joining any political party, but will soon make an announcement regarding her future ambitions. She further shared her gratitude towards those who helped her in a political journey. Natasha Piri, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, Balindile Duli is here in studio for a conversation about both the past 15 years in the DA, but also what she is looking into next. Good evening. Thanks very much for coming through.
Thank you for having me, Buyo. It's great to be here.
Those tears? What was going through your mind?
I mean, I just got a little bit emotional watching it now, and like the way I look when I cry. But I think it was when I was speaking about the acknowledgement of the collaboration with women, particularly from other political parties in my legislature, and sort of how they took me in when I was quite young, and I've been the youngest female member for a long time. But I've really been appreciative of the way that they've helped my journey too, and I think for me, the collaboration across political party spectrums has been one of the most special things of my career.
How did you get to that point where you said, okay, I'm taking this decision now, I'm out of here?
I think it's a culmination of things. I think for some time, and even when I was running for the leadership of the party, I've had some ideas of how we can maybe reimagine politics, think outside of the box, because I find that our political party system is quite rigid. I find the political parties archaic in the way that they do things. And I've tried to change it from within, but I think that, you also have to respect that organizations want to behave the way that they do. And I'd like to see whether that kind of energy and the kind of ideas I have are viable. And I want to go back to communities and see that, what I'm thinking is what people are feeling, and whether it resonates, because then, of course, we can start to reimagine how people can take back the power from the political parties and the political system that really isn't working for us anymore. And I'm greatly frustrated, and I don't like to be in a place where I feel helpless and unable to at least do some work that I feel is worthwhile and fulfilling.
Did your experience while you were contesting for the position of party leader, is that what broke the camel's back, so to speak?
No, I think you would be very naive if you were ever to be in a contestation and expect that the outcome wouldn't be that you would lose. And I think that for me, I didn't even see it as a failure. I saw it as such a great opportunity to really push myself and push the ability of whether or not I was ready for that kind of stage. And I think I was, and I think I still am. So that wasn't it. I think it's just come, I sit in some committee meetings where half the people are asleep. I've just lost, I think, a little bit of faith in the system and the way that people behave and the way our political parties aren't willing to collaborate and innovate and work together, even if they have some things that they disagree on, towards a bigger vision. And I don't want to be a part of that, and I want to be associated with that at the moment. And for me and my purpose to feel like I'm aligned with it, I really want to go back and do work that I can see the outcomes of.
And I want us to talk about, the political system, or broadly the body politic, in a moment. But I just want to stay with matters DA for a few seconds. When you were, running for the position of a party leader, I'm going to quote something you said. I've run my campaign showing that what I want from this party is for everyone to feel included. The idea of diversity as one of our principles should be the one cherished the most. Now, I'm reading this with a quote in mind. I don't know who said it, but I remember in my younger days I had hearing or reading this, someone saying, when people say they have rights, they generally mean they are suffering wrongs. In other words, reading between the lines, when you talk about a need to feel included, when you talk about the idea of a diversity, you're putting it differently, but essentially saying you don't feel included. You're saying there is no or not enough diversity. Was that the case? Is that how you felt?
Of course. I ran a campaign and I was forthright, and I said it far more explicitly in other parts of my campaign material, that I didn't feel that we were fostering a culture of embracing people with differing views and diversity, and I felt that they were likely to be ostracized, sometimes maybe even penalized and having disciplinaries weaponized against him, and that there was a hierarchy of who could say things and who couldn't. And so I've never shied away from that, and I wanted to change that culture. But, I respected the democratic outcome, that maybe it was just me who was feeling that way, or people that supported me. And so that's fine. The party must continue, and if that's where they feel that they need to be and that things are working out, then I wish them the very best.
you're repeating that term, weaponized. You use that word to refer to, for instance, internal processes, disciplinary processes that were instituted against people you feel had a right to raise certain things. I mean, you went through a number of those yourselves. Is that generally the culture, that those who voice dissent or who speak their minds were punished, and disciplinary processes and the like were used to either silence them or to harass them?
Look, I think that, first of all, it's also not unique to the DA. I think any organization, and particularly the political organizations we have in our country, just operate in that way, which is why I find nothing inspiring about them. But certainly, I don't have to look far. I feel that sometimes that was how I was treated in certain instances, and there's been many cases where there has been disciplinaries or partial disciplinaries or things that have been said to me that have been without merit for what I've said. And I thought that that was wrong, and no doubt there were many people beneath me that had the same experiences. But not everyone is going to have the access, platform, privilege, or conviction sometimes to be able to speak up for things. And I was not speaking just of myself, but I wanted the culture to change. So I did believe that, and I think that is something that is not healthy in any organization.
I mean, if you wanted the culture to change, what attracted you to the DA in the first place?
I don't think that the DA was always like that. I think it's been a formidable opposition. I think it was a party that allowed a great space for young people who weren't looked upon as having the mettle to make it in political parties from others. But also I consider myself somebody who had a very open-minded outlook on the way that the world could be and the way that we could organize society. And certainly the DA I joined when I was a student was very much like that. I think there's still really great people in the DA who I consider close friends and colleagues, and I'm going to miss them dearly. But there has been a culture shift, and you can't have so many people feeling and saying these things in the party without the introspection that needs to go with it. And that's if you want to be a political party that seems to be able to adapt and to be able to take what people say seriously, especially if you want to say that you're going to lead society, because you're going to have those exact issues become the issues that are already happening in South Africa. So for me, that was important, and I felt that I needed to say it. And I didn't just complain. I said, this is what I would do, and I'm putting my hand up, and I ran a race.
So is that also how people who are like-minded, who think like you think, is that how they also feel about the party? In other words, it's not a question of you or your dreams being thwarted and then now feeling the way you are feeling and seeing the need to leave the party.
I definitely can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself very clearly about why I'm leaving. And I don't think my dreams have been thwarted at all. I'm 33, I've got lots to do. But what I do feel is that I want to have the space to, I think, do things in a way that I'm currently unable to do in politics. And that's not just about the DA. I mean, for example, I'd love to go into schools and do a lot of work there, but that's inappropriate sometimes when it comes from somebody who's in a political party. And it can be simple things like that even. I'd like to speak to faith-based organizations, civil society organizations, do some collaborations on the ground. And sometimes that can be viewed cynically in a political party. But I think for me, that's the future of where politics needs to go. And I don't know if I can do that within that system. And I think that I've also lost faith in that system just because of the way across the board we see political parties behaving.
I mean, if by your own admission you're young and you feel you have a great future ahead of you, could you not have stayed the course and perhaps pushed a little bit more, to create the kind of, or help create the kind of DA you want?
I think that's an excellent question, because if anyone can tell me exactly how much time one should stay before they feel that they've done enough, then of course I would consider that. But I think 15 years of good work and trying to push the envelope and trying to put these views ahead is quite enough for me. I think that for my own emotional and physical energies, it's probably best to see sometimes that something needs to be looked at in a different angle, or sometimes you need to leave. So I feel comfortable with the amount of time I've spent there. And I don't feel like if I had stayed any longer, that would have made much of a difference. If anything, I think it would be disingenuous to earn the kind of salaries that MPs earn and sitting there not really doing as much as you could because you felt like you were constantly pushing against something that maybe isn't ready to adapt or maybe won't. So, you know, if there's a formula for how long that should be, I'd be grateful for us and to look at it. And I think that that's not just for people in the DA, that's for people in other political parties where you look at them and you say, your party has all these incredible issues. How are you still in there? And if you're in politics for the passion and for the fact that it might be a calling for you, it's not an easy decision to just get up and leave. But I think once you think that you have done what you can, then it becomes much easier. And so I leave with, you know, graciousness, but also I leave with being resolute that this is the right choice.
Now, notwithstanding your hopes, you know, feelings and aspirations, what do you think the DA still has to offer people like you, but those who still haven't given up on the ideal, you know, or the ideals you had when you joined?
Well, the DA is still in about 20% party in the country, so there are a significant grouping of people that still feel that it has the policies and the vision that resonate with them. And I think the DA as a party machinery is very formidable still and has incredible people that work on the ground, particularly at a local government level, that really do the kind of work that is what South Africans deserves. Whether or not that is always about the culture of the rest of the party is where I think the party needs to really take some stock and see whether or not it's being as effective as it is. But as a party, like I say, it has some really great people, and I think that that's maybe where they need to go back and start building up from.
And what would be, and I'm thinking of people who may have seen you and people like you and thought, you know, I like this party, or I subscribe to the views, you know, that people like Mbali hold, who now feel betrayed because they now have to hold on, you know, to things that people like you actually help them decide, you know, where to go.
So I think for me, and I've always said this, it's very dangerous to hold on to a political party. What you should always have at the heart and the crux of what drives you is the cause and why you're there. And if a political party changes, you should feel very comfortable to be able to leave it. And that should apply to people who may have been inspired by me. If they feel that they want to explore alternatives, that's the whole point of politics, is that you have the competitiveness of the ideas and the kind of, you know, sort of back and forth debates that can bring about the best political thought that can help solve issues. And so for me, I hope that I've always shown that I'm not here for any particular leader, I'm not following any particular brand or part of the party, but that there's a cause that I'm going after, and I've always been more Team South Africa than Team any political party. So I'm still going back to communities to do that kind of good work. And I hope that I'll find a space where we can have those kinds of collaborations in any case. So I hope that people, when they look at people like myself, understand that we're not married to political parties, and neither should they be.
But what is it exactly that you're hoping to do?
That's a lot. I mean, I resigned today, so I'd like to maybe take a couple of weeks to just decompress. But
You would never resign, left without knowing, or at least having a much clearer idea.
I mean, I have some thoughts about what I'd like to do. I think I'd like to identify change makers in the country, and I certainly get enough people coming to me, organizations, individuals that are doing good work. I think I have access to a wide network of individuals, companies, people that have the means to help, whether it's monetarily, whether it's empowerment of some sort. And then, I mean, you know, my province just elected a new king for AmaZulu. I'd like to go speak to him about the developmental aspects of what that looks like in terms of rural KZN. There's a lot, but I want to come back and be able to say concretely, this is what I'm going to do. And so I'd hate to seem vague and wishy-washy now when I haven't done that, and I need the space to just be away from being in the political system to also objectively look at what it is that needs to be done and how I can help communities do it rather than being able to tell them.
But have you ruled out completely the idea of staying in politics?
I'm a person that's very political by nature. I think it's in my blood, and so I would never say never, but none of the political parties right now give me any pause of thought about having the gumption to want to join them in any respect. So, you know, maybe in the future, who knows what happens. In South Africa, our politics is very dynamic, but for now, I don't see myself being a part of any of the current political parties.
Well, often when politicians or say, no, there's no party that serves my interests or that captures my imagination right now, they generally mean that I am going to go out there and form my own thing.
Wow, I'd be very proud of myself if I had that kind of fortitude right now. But that's not really where my head is at.
Well, why wouldn't you, though? Is it how you feel generally about the body politic?
No, I mean, I think you need to reimagine this, but I don't know if political parties are the way to go. The more I think about it, like I say, I think there's a collaboration that's happened before in our country that gives us a very clear blueprint, particularly the mass democratic movements, the UDF kind of movements that we had when you couldn't have political parties in this country. And that was more of a cross-cultural sector of people from different backgrounds being able to take back political power and really governing by the people to, well, so to say, they didn't govern, but they were very powerful. And I'm wondering whether or not that isn't what we need to see going forward. Obviously, that would have to be organized in some way, and I haven't got a high-level concept of how that would happen. But I really don't want to go stick myself back in the confines of being told how to do things, who may speak on things. I'm utterly bored, and I think most people are in South Africa of the way politics is done in this country, and so I don't have the appetite for what's currently out there. But if I decide to form a political party, you'll be the first to know.
Well, I mean, obviously, I mean, when you if you don't like being told what to do, when you form your own thing, you get to be the one who then tells other people what to do. I don't
think it's about not being told what to do. I think it's just about the confines of how it's so rigid already right now that you can't even think what it would look like if not. And I certainly, I don't really want to do that, to be quite honest. And I'm not there right now. So I don't want to keep, talking about something that's not really on my mind at the moment. But I do want to go back into the communities, and I do want to do that. And that's really where I'm at.
What do you think those leading political parties currently are missing, or are not doing, or are oblivious to?
I find them uninspiring, and I find them to be more worried about the factional politics of their parties and the interest of whoever's in the leadership more than I see them giving a clear vision of what needs to happen in South Africa and having some kind of blueprint of what that looks like. There's such a plethora of things that are crises that are happening in South Africa all the time, and I'm just unsatisfied with the answers that we're getting from our political leadership across the board.
So how much time are you giving yourself to think and arrive at a decision?
About what?
About what you're going to do next.
I don't know, Vuyo, as long as it takes me to be able to do it properly and then be able to give people a proper answer to the question of how South Africans and how everyone who is actually a patriot can contribute. But I'd like to afford myself the chance to be able to think about that very clearly and very carefully before I just, announce things for the sake of it.
Have you spoken directly to any of your, like to John Steniers in particular?
The person that I resigned to are my direct line managers, and that would be Francois Rabidges as my provincial leader and then Zwakele as the chief whip.
And you haven't spoken to the national leadership?
I'm not required to as an MPL, but I'm sure if they want to reach out to me, they will.
I'm going to courtesy call, say, hey, I've resigned. Don't be surprised when you hear about it.
They all received an email.
Yeah, that's why we're going to leave it. Well, best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Balindile Duli, who today resigned from the Democratic Alliance. After the break, we'll take a look at President Cyril Ramaphosa's appearance before Parliament, where the Russia-Ukraine conflict took center stage. Barely a week after President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that he had been on a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin regarding the war between Russia and Ukraine. The conflict is no closer to a resolution. Today, while replying to questions in Parliament, Ramaphosa said taking sides would exclude South Africa from playing the role of a peacemaker.
The conflict in Ukraine is a matter of global concern to many citizens of various countries. The international community needs to work together to achieve a cessation of hostilities and to prevent further loss of life and displacement of the citizens, of civilians of Ukraine. It needs to support meaningful dialogue towards a lasting and meaningful peace, which ensures the security and stability of all nations. As a country, we are committed to the articles of the United Nations Charter, including the principle that all members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means. We support the principle that members should refrain from the threat of use of force against the territorial and political independence of other states. That is why at the United Nations General Assembly Emergency Special Session, South Africa strongly urged all sides to uphold international law, including humanitarian law and human rights law, and as well as the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty as well. While there are people within our country and elsewhere that want South Africa to adopt a more adversarial position, our position seeks to contribute to the creation of conditions that make the achievement of a durable resolution of the conflict possible. Through this approach, we are able to make our voice heard, not only publicly, but also to the parties that are involved in the conflict. And by doing so, as we talk to them, as we exchange views and interact with them, we bring our influence to bear on the issue of dialogue, mediation, and negotiation, which has always stood us in good stead as a nation. Our approach is informed by an analysis also of the causes of the conflict. This includes a view shared by many, both leading scholars, politicians, and you name a number of other people, on international relations, that the war could have been avoided. Like other countries, South Africa is concerned about the direct impact of the conflict on our own economy through financial markets and inflationary pressures that will come about through food price increases and fuel price increases as well. As a small and open economy with significant debt levels, one of the most significant steps that we can take to reduce our vulnerability to external shocks is to improve our macroeconomic stability.
President Cyril Ramaphosa there in Parliament during this afternoon's question and answer session. You will recall that on Friday last week he sent about 3 tweets where he spoke about the call he made to President Putin, but also suggested that there was an interest from certain countries, BRICS countries in particular, that he perhaps play some role, although he wouldn't expand on the kind of role that he had been asked to play. And that, again, came up today. President also saying that a couple of countries have again asked him South Africa to play some role, although he wouldn't really expand on that role or who those countries were that had hinted or at least made such a request. Of course, we'll be monitoring this space. But NATO says it has a huge responsibility to stop the conflict from escalating further in the Ukraine. But the Defense Alliance says it will not intervene militarily in the conflict, something it's been saying for a while now. Peace talks between Russia and Ukraine continue via video link. The parties are discussing military, political, and humanitarian issues.
Ukrainians are still bearing the brunt of the raging conflict. Authorities in Mariupol are hoping to evacuate civilians through 9 humanitarian corridors. The Human Rights Watch says the Mariupol theatre has been hit by Russians and has been sheltering 500 civilians. NATO chief says the situation is quite precarious.
NATO has a responsibility to prevent this conflict from escalating further. That would be even more dangerous and would cause more suffering, death and destruction. This is President Putin's war. He must stop the war, withdraw his forces and engage in diplomacy in good faith.
The Kremlin has blasted some Russians who are resigning and leaving the country. It says they shouldn't be used by the West and labelled them as traitors. The British military intelligence says Russia's invasion of Ukraine has largely stalled while the situation remains tense in the capital in Kyiv. US President Joe Biden has called his Russian counterpart, President Vladimir Putin, a war criminal, and Moscow has slammed Biden, saying this is unacceptable. Kylie Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
And that's our show for this evening. To join us again tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. sharp. Have a good night.